we can present our I'm trying to do one.
Yeah.
Talk
Okay.
about our industry.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Good afternoon, good evening, and sometime maybe somewhere it is good morning or good night.
Good
Uh,
evening. Good evening.
yeah, Husham is here, Abeer is here, and Professor Iris is also with us. So I will not take much time, and I will go straight forward to Husham to start
Yeah.
his presentation. And
Okay. First,
definitely during this presentation, anyone has any question, he can put his question immediately.
sure. First, I apologize to everyone.
No worries.
Was a bit late. Apologies. I had another meeting actually. Just run out, and Zoom is always a bit funny for us to connect for some reason.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm just gonna try and open up the presentation. So you just give me 1 second.
So are you using Mac?
No, unfortunately, I will be though very soon.
No, no, it's good. If you are not
Use your
using Mac, it's good because it's
Yeah,
easy to share from Windows.
from Mac. Yeah,
No,
that's what I
Mac
heard.
is
Yeah.
difficult to share.
Now, Usha means like, I don't know if others have a different experience, but if you see from the productivity and the use wise, I find Microsoft as the best thing as of now.
Correct.
Maybe means like Apple is very good, like handling wise, look wise, graphics is very good. But if you see at the productivity level, I don't think means Apple is anywhere near to Microsoft, right?
That's
Anyhow,
good to know. Okay,
yeah,
okay. So try not to take too much of your time, guys, and I'll try and be quick. You can see the presentation at the moment.
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I will just try and put this down a bit here. Right.
Can you please
In
put it in
here,
presentation mode?
yeah, I'm trying to do it while. Okay, there it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Better now?
yeah.
Okay. So this is just a little bit about Royal Jet. We are a private jet company. We are based in the UAE, and we are. It's basically the company has been an award-winning company in the private jet business. This is predominantly due to our fleet. The fleet of aircraft that we have is made out of Boeing business jets in VIP configuration. The Boeing business jet is similar to the 737. Like, for example, those who are familiar with the Fly Dubai fleet, it's the same aircraft from the outside, but the inside is completely different. It's outfitted with bedrooms, showers, fast internet, lounges, you name it. Some aeroplanes have even special features, offices and spas and things like that. So this is the world of business aviation in general. And we've been in this business since 2003. So here's just a list of awards that we have won during that period as the world's leading private jet service provider by World Travel Awards, the Middle East leading private jet charter company, and also a business aviation operator at the Aviation Business Awards. Right. Some of the service, the fleet of the aircraft, as I mentioned earlier, is made of 8 Boeing business jets and 2 Bombardier Global 5000s. We are also a co-founding member of MIVA, the Middle East Business Aviation Association. We are also a member of MBAA, and we're also a member of the Luxury Network. These are all in the business aviation world, some big associations. The offerings that we have is charter services, medical evacuation services, where the aeroplane is turned into a flying ambulance, basically. Charter brokerage, fixed base operation. This is basically the VIP lounge and the aircraft handling service together, so that the VIPs, when they come, they don't go through the international terminals. They go through what we call a fixed base operation center. So the VIP can come from his car, go straight away to the aircraft, and passing through the VIP lounge and so on. So these kind of services are done with special ways of arranging security and immigration and so on. We do aircraft management for owners who wish to have their airplanes managed by us or even chartered by us. We can do that. And we can do aircraft acquisitions as well. We have a maintenance team, an engineering team, a modifications team. We have that in-house. They can either do certain work in-house or outsource. We can manage that, especially in the aircraft interior for the VIP jets. This is a very peculiar job, very specialized job. And we have like private aviation consultants. Now, the company had several runs of management cycles in its start, and over about 4 years ago, Sheikh Mohammed bin Hamad Rahman has been appointed as managing director of the company, and then he became the chairman afterwards. So he started introducing new ways, and he's more of a people's person. And he started introducing new ways of managing the company and adding the younger generation and new ideas and so on. And he wanted to have a concept of employee engagement. So we had this task to look at the bonus system, for instance. And this was purely for employee motivation. The existing system we had was very old and it was inefficient. It was some of the old contracts that people had, which was just like based on a fixed amount, or you get 1 month or 2 months a year, and that's about it. Whether the company is performing, not performing, you are performing or not performing is part of your contract. This is how things like that used to be in the past. So that was not agile or mobile enough for us. So the CEO then, he started to initiate this engagement, and we had several workshops set with various management teams across the company. So what is the best idea to come up with, just looking at the bonus as an initiative for employee motivation in general, just look at the bonus and what is the best way to do it that people are going to be, are going to have some kind of ownership of the process as we go through. So we come up with a new scheme and it was approved by the board. Basic concept of this model. Remember, Mustafa, you had particular interest in this, so I just tried to put a bit more detail on it. So everybody is part of this bonus scheme, from the top management all the way down to the ground floor of the. And it depended predominantly on the company performance, of course, and the employees' performance appraisal system. So the company took 10%. This is the idea of the bonus scheme that we were proposing, is the company to take 10% of the annual profit, and this goes in a pool. So a company makes $10 million, 1 million goes in the pool for the year. And then that pool gets divided into percentages. And this percentage is relying on the grade of the persons. So for example, the CEO will be at the highest percentage, and then directors, and then the managers, and the supervisors, and so on, as we go along. So we created certain categories A, B, C, D. So the CEO, for example, will be in category A, and he will have, let's say, a 5% of the pool amount. So that $1 million, 10% is 100,000. 50%, 50,000. Sorry, is a 5%, for example. So that will be the amount he will make. The director will be category B. He will make half of that. Manager will be category C. He will make half of the director, and so on. So that was the idea.
No, my question is how you got the buy-ins. For example, these numbers are at the top management. It's okay. People might know numbers, but especially at the employee level or at at very lower employee level, they don't know these numbers, that how much percentage company having in terms of profit, and how they are sharing. They are just believing the management, or they have very clear numbers in front of them that how much profit our company is making this year.
I'm coming to that, because for this to work, it has to be, you have to be transparent with the
Yeah.
people, right? So I'll be coming to that point. But yeah, just hold the thought there one second.
Before that, I have a small question.
Sure.
You told 10% of the profit.
Yes,
It will be a very big amount, isn't it? 10%. Because
absolutely.
I in my office, in my organization also, we have a similar arrangement wherein we set aside 1% of the booking amount, like 1%.
It's, we put that number because,
Okay.
again, because we are addressing an issue.
Yeah, fine. I understand. Okay. Okay.
Employee motivation. And at the same time, you have to govern this use of the pool in the right way. So if somebody is not performing, you know, he's not gonna get the bonus, or he's gonna get not gonna get his full bonus. And you will be surprised at the end of it, you'll be surprised that normally there is some money that goes back into the pool after you pay everybody out. You know, so that's what we found. So what we do to become transparent with people, because the idea is you want everybody to know that his effort is making a direct impact on the bottom number of the company. So you can sit down and you can say, let's say I am in the 1% category, for example. So I will be making that $10,000, for example. So you will see the company's performance month by month. You can see, are we on target with our operational targets in terms of aircraft utilization? Is the airplane flying enough hours? Are we on target with the revenue? Are we on target with the profits? And on the company, we display the set, just simple charts, you know, that display where we are towards our targets. So if you're all in the green, you know, you're calculating yourself as month by month goes, you know that how much you're going to get at the end of the year. And specifically, we did not want to put a ceiling to it. So it doesn't really matter if the company makes, instead of 10 million, the company makes 100 million, we will put 10 million in the pool, you know, so that people know that there is no limit to how much I'm making. And because you know there's no limit to how much you're making, there's no limit to how much effort you'll put in. That was the philosophy that we followed it up. And that's why even people at the lower level feel that they own a stake of that profit already. Because to the higher management or to the board, if they ask us to deliver 10 million a year and we deliver 20, even if you put 10% in the pool, they are still making an additional 9 million in that they were not even thinking about before. So that's okay. It's almost like when you calculate in your sales, the commission based, when you calculate the commission as a cost of sales, this is a very similar concept, to be honest with you. You're paying your half a commission in a way, you know?
Okay, Husham, can I ask a question, please?
Please, yeah.
Thank you. This type of stratification into categories A, B, C, does it cause any firing back? Because I would expect that having, you know, the maximum bonus going to the upper management, it might have a point when the leadership itself or managerial efforts are, you know, exceeding extraordinary or exceeding expectations. But we know sometimes what happens is that the innovative or hard worker frontier is being, you know, I wouldn't say bullied by, but concealed by his own manager, direct manager or upper manager. So does it have any type of firing back?
Correct. And this is why for this system to work, you really need a strong HR system where it controls the performance appraisal. So if, let's say, somebody has a personal issue with his employee and he doesn't give him the 80%, he gets less than 80%. This will affect his bonus amount, because if somebody earns or somebody scores less than 80%, then he will get only 50% of his bonus. He will only get half the bonus. So that's a significant impact. HR is activated immediately to look into that case and say, why is this guy on below 80? Now, if it is justified, they will ask his manager. If it is justified, done, clear. The guy has discipline issues, the guy has warnings in his file, the guy has this, that, fair enough. Then he makes only 50. And if somebody is below 60, he gets 0. He doesn't get anything on that. And again, this is where we need the HR to be fully engaged in monitoring this, because let's face it, it's actually quite risky doing this. And that's why we have to really govern it well. And on the other hand, we also have had an idea where most of the times you will find there is money left over. So what to do with that money? We award exceptional employees. So you may find certain employee who is outstanding. There will normally be a list, and purposely, to be honest with you, we didn't put a limit to that list, because every manager has to justify how many people he is putting forward. And then there is a committee created, and this committee will be made of several members from different departments, will decide, is this guy deserving it or not? And normally by the end of it, you will end up with about 7 or 8 people. They will be deserving a discretionary bonus. So they will get an additional amount as approved by the CEO, goes to them. And the other thing we see also to improve on the motivation is that money goes into the fund for the staff welfare and the staff social committees. So you can organize Ramadan iftars, you can organize games for people, whatever it is, you can basically use it for the social committee of the staff. Again, as another driver.
Husham, just a small question, if I may ask. Dhirender here. This thing, you are paying it on a yearly basis, right? It's not on quarter-to-quarter basis?
No, it's a yearly basis, yes.
It's a yearly basis. So will be good, like if you can give some insight onto the impact of this bonus scheme onto the retention of the staff, or like how it is impacting on keeping the talent within the company. What's your observations there?
Very positive. In this slide here, I only looked at, to be honest with you, some of the outcomes. I only looked at what the company did profit-wise. But yes, we have a very low, what do you call it, employee, I forgot the word.
Attrition rate.
Yes, exactly. So employees' retention is quite high with us. We rarely have people who choose to resign and leave the company for the other opportunities. And we have seen that this had an impact into it. And since we started the system, we looked at a 3-year, just to track it back. I mean, I did not myself, but just to track it back. And the first year we were on target with our profits. The second year, we actually beat the targets, and it was a record year for us. The third year, we beat the targets, and we beat the previous year, and we had a second record year. And in 2020, unfortunately, we were on target to go ahead for another record, but COVID-19, as you all know, hit aviation pretty bad. So at the moment, we don't see that happening for this year, but hopefully next year when things pick up again, we'll come back to the normal level that we expect to be at.
Okay, sorry, a quick question from you. Now, have you guys considered the percentage of people that score below 60 and earn nothing? against those people that score 60 and above? Have you done the statistics year on year to know if the percentage of people that are scoring below 60 are rising or reducing? And the essence of this is when you do that, you can use that to monitor the objectivity of the appraisal system.
Absolutely. This is just not to confuse it. That analysis of people scoring in their appraisal system is the job of HR. And HR have their own way where they introduce like an online appraisal system. We use Halogen, system called Halogen. And the system has various inputs into it and is accessible by various management levels and so on. But that system has the ability, the HR people can, they withdraw from the system all the analyses and the data, how many people scored above 60, how many people above 80, how many people above 90, and also in which areas, because there is some core objectives for all staff, and there is certain objectives which are only for certain departmental. So the system would be able to tell you what this employee is doing. All of that analysis is already existing, and that's already the HR team, they have dedicated people to monitor that. What we did here with the bonus is only to use the reference of the appraisal system as to decide who is gonna get how much of the bonus. And we said we were pretty lenient, to be honest with you. And we said, as long as you're above 80, you will deserve your full bonus for the year. A lot of the staff, they hover about between the 80 and the 90 mark. Anyway, that's what we see. Very few fall below the 60, and very few fall above the 90, to be honest with you.
Husham, when you are saying full bonus mean what? The one salary, two salary, or mean whatever the total profit, and what will be your share?
No, let's say I'm in the 2.5% mark, category B. So if I score above 80, my manager gives me above 80, I will get my 2.5%. If I score below 80, I will get 1.25%. That's what it means. It's not related to salaries. That's specifically, we canceled that approach. But when you say I'm linking it to salary, people know, okay, that's my ceiling, that's what I'm getting to, that's it. When you don't, people don't have a limit.
I have, again, still maybe I'm not able to understand how you are making sure that an employee who is having a salary, let's say 5,000 dirham, he is aware that if what will be my amount that I'm going to receive at the end of the year. This is my question number one. And question number two, how he will know that the company is making this year $1 million profit or $2 million profit. How these numbers are being published for the employees?
Okay, let's say, for example, you as a company, depends on if you're a private company or working for a public listed company. Public listed, they have to announce everything anyway.
Yeah.
Nothing is hidden. But if you're a private company, you may not be like our case, for example. You're limited to what you can share.
Yeah.
Right? But you can, the employees and the company, and also, they know that you have certain targets to reach. So you can say, I am reaching my, for this year, our target is to operate 10,000 hours of flying, for example. On a monthly basis, people can see on the boards how many hours we've flown. So they know we're on target or we're outside target. Same thing with revenue. People know, for example, of our revenue target. Every month for us has a different revenue target because chartered business aviation is relying on seasons, relying on different things. So for every month, there is a separate revenue target. Then again, you can say, you can publish to the employees to say, for this month, I am on my revenue, or I exceeded my revenue targets, or I'm below my revenue targets. Now, one thing I didn't also go into detail, I just gave the general idea. But one thing we look at, the business drivers are the people who are the CEO, the directors and the managers, right? Maybe the section heads and the supervisors, depends on the organization. Yeah, these are the business drivers. Those people do know the numbers. They know what is the target and they know physically the figures that we're getting. But people below that, the worker levels and stuff like that, they will see the percentage, they will see the operational hours, they will see the utilizations. So they know, they have an idea, we're doing good, we're doing bad, are we exceeding, are we below? And they know from the previous year how much they made anyway. So they know that what they can estimate how much they're getting without us necessarily publishing the numbers out there for them. So this is a
I have from this I have another question, because normally your bonus is based on profit, not on revenue.
yeah, definitely profit. Yeah.
What happens normally? Sometimes you have overbookings and you have a lot of customer where you are putting your profit margin high. You are putting maybe 30% or sometime maybe 40% or whatever it is. But in
Yes.
difficult situation like nowadays because of Corona, we just wanted to move on, and sometimes we are not putting any profit margin. So there is a possibility that you will reach your revenue target, but you will not get any profit, or you will be lower than. Then how those employees at lower level will understand that they will get bonus or they will not get bonus?
It's to be honest with you, Mustafa, it's kind of very obvious from the Corona is not a usual, it's not a normal scenario that we're going through.
No, I'm just giving an example.
But,
Other than this, let's say
yeah.
in a normal year, this year the CEO decided to increase the revenue from 100 million to 500 million, and the strategy is okay, reduce the rates, and with reducing the rates, your profit is also going to decrease. End of the day, you are not going to make, let's say, $10 million profit. Although your revenue is more, you are making 5 times more revenue, but your profit is less. So how
True.
a common employee, my question again, because I look at from this perspective that if a normal employee is putting his effort and ensuring that he wants to make the company in profit, and he is blank, he doesn't know what is going on, what is the profit percentage, or what is the ratio towards revenue, so it will be difficult for him to believe in it.
Correct. For us, for example, because and I get your point. Like you can be doing very well on revenue, but your profit can be zero or minus.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's okay. That's understood. Normally, for us in the business aviation, they kind of tend to go together because we don't. The way we have the sales is not the same as a conventional way where, for example, you guys have in your factories or your facilities. It's done quite different because everybody knows the cost of operation of an aeroplane, cost of fuel, cost of operation, what we call a DOC, direct operating costs. And so everyone knows these costs, and then the revenue is calculated, and from that revenue there is profit always. So normally they go together. But as a suggestion for you, you can actually publish the profit targets, and you can say how far you are from your targets. And you can share that with the employees on a monthly basis. You say, okay, revenue, fine, but our main indicator is the profit. This month, you guys are at, you achieved this month's profit at 100%. The next month, you guys messed it up and you're only at 70%. Don't forget this is going to affect your final, your end of the year bonus. So you need to push. And the month after that, they may come back to 90. Okay, guys, we're getting better. Then the month after that, you may be 120% of your profit, you know? And then by the end of the year, people will as the months go along, you will be able to know how you're performing, and the people will be able to know how much they're going to make. You know? So maybe you can just adjust that, and you just use the profit as your main indicator in this case.
So maybe Professor Iris has some question. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. Thanks for some very interesting points. The question that I had, because we often, this kind of pool or the common incentives is a topic we often sort of recommend, in executives that they should implement it for exactly the reason that you mentioned. And the two sort of obstacles that they see is the point about transparency, that Mustafa said, how to make the numbers transparent. And often in companies, this is a big no. And the second point that I often see is that they say that, well, ownership sounds nice, and we want to give more ownership to our employees. But at the same time, this might raise some conflict because you transfer some power, because the ownership is not only that, I get some money from the pool, but does it also mean that I'm more, basically that you delegate decision power for me? And I was wondering whether with the incentive scheme that you changed 3 years ago, you also changed the decision-making process in the sense that people were more entitled to decision, and how what the coordination challenges, because if we are both making decisions, it's likely that we might disagree on, we both want to work hard for the company, but I might think that A is better way, and you might be thinking that B is the better way to go forward. So that's my my question.
Yeah. Thanks, Professor. I mean, yeah, you're right. And as I say, it's not, for example, like, it doesn't mean that this is just so easy to do and we go over it. No, there is, of course, certain hurdles, and it relies on the talent of the managers, the business drivers, them working together. Really what we see is this created a certain sense of togetherness and ownership amongst those people, especially the business drivers. For example, regarding the first question, regarding the transparency, we didn't have to be transparent to that level of sharing numbers with the employees because we are a privately owned company. But the amazing thing about it is this transparency drive came from the leadership. So His Highness and the CEO themselves, they said, look, we are all in one boat. So if we're gonna survive together, we will all sail together. If the ship is gonna sink, we'll all sink together. So we don't have an issue to let the employees know how the company is performing. There's nothing hidden. So even the people know, for example, what the CEO is making on the bonus, and they don't have an issue with that because it is structured. There was a buy-in from the employees. They don't have an issue with that because yes, the CEO will make a bigger portion, but he's got a bigger responsibility, bigger role, and so on. But at the same time, you have no limit. Your percentage, the bigger the profit pool, which is the 10%, the bigger the pool is, the more you can elevate yourself and you can make. So that we found that the energy and the employees, especially the business drivers, started working together pretty well. And yes, there may be certain disagreements, there may be certain difference of opinions where both want to get to the same point, but this guy has a certain path he prefers to the other guy. But what we found is the levels above, the guys on the, for example, we start at the CEO, and then the directors below is like one team. They themselves are one team. And then that trickles down to their team. So that the energy that shown by example and so on, you have to show that to your people and lead them into how they are going to work together. I hope I've answered in a way the question.
Sumit has a question. Sumit, please go ahead.
I just wanted to come back on Professor Aris's point that if you're giving ownership to the staff, to the employees of the company, to some extent you also dilute the power making, the decision making power. I think what I've noticed is a lot of times ESOPs, when they're given out, most of the shares given out are non-voting shares. So which basically means that they don't have any authority. They just hold equity. They have ownership of the company, but they're not allowed to vote during the annual general meeting
Decisions,
or.
yeah.
Okay, one more point in the same domain. Thank you, Dr. Aris, for providing us with this type of highlight. Actually, there is a concept called X-teaming. I don't know how relevant is it to your business model, Husham. X-teaming is more or less about the affiliated or collaborative type of management, whereby the entire team is not excluding the frontiers. Actually, we always look at the frontiers as source of creativity, while we look at the executives or senior platforms as a source of insights with more of lessons learned. In my own business domain, I think we could see the impact of excluding one patch against the other, or engaging one platform but not the other. Now, I was thinking of this teaming model. They are creating like a holistic model of think tank, if you may, where we are kind of course, the senior management as, kind of fixed membership or, permanent members, while they rotate with others who are at lower levels, maybe supervisors or below, where they can engage people, because engagement and partnership is not about only money and incentives. This increases their loyalty, and I don't know to which extent this is kind of applicable to your particular business model.
Yeah, to be honest with you, the first time I hear about that one, I'd love to look into it or learn about it a bit more.
Just a model. Mm-hmm.
Is it X teaming? Is that what you call
Actually,
it?
we call it here affiliative or collaborative model. And I got a course with MIT, and they call it the same model. They called it X teaming. Now, I have to caution you. I try to do it in our. This is why I asked Mustafa in a previous meeting about the cultural differences between the Middle East and the West. Because I see when I was in Baltimore, Johns Hopkins, Baltimore, that the affiliation is kind of very accepted culture-wise. While here, if you are not authorized, I think nobody will listen to you. Maybe
100% true. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
And when we implemented this system, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. Even board members in the beginning, they did not. They refused it completely. But we had the support of His Highness, and luckily, we managed to convince them, because, as you quite rightly said, the culture is different in Europe. I mean, I used to work in the UK before, and we had share options, and we had things like that within the organization, and that also gave you a sense of ownership.
Exactly.
But it's completely different game, and the closest we could get to is to use the bonus scheme to make the employees feel some of the ownership on there. I mean, while developing this system, because I was one of the people who, and it was several ideas together until we arrived at this, but I saw something in Costa Rica called the Cooperativa, where a company, it's an aircraft maintenance company. We had a project with them many years ago. The whole company is divided into shares, the whole company. And every employee in the company owns shares in that company. There is no external owners. So CEO is a shareholder, the cleaner is a shareholder, the officer is a shareholder, and that worked so well. The scheme was initially funded by the government and then handed over to the employees so that they can stay in the jobs and so on. There is a history to it because it used to be owned by an external company, and that company decided to pull out and shut down the business, and people were going to be out of jobs and so on. So the government funded them and handed over the shares to the staff. And in that company, the CEO gets voted in, is to that extent. And every decision is voted in, it affects the company, the whole staff. So yeah, things like that are amazing to see in the totally different culture in Latin America.
I agree.
Sham, I have again the similar question. I'm not able again, I can say maybe to find the correct thing. I'll just put an example. Let's say one employee in your company is having in bracket 1%, and his salary, let's say $5,000, and your company is making $1 million profit in a year. How much money he will get at the end of the year with numbers?
Okay. It's a mathematics question. So so you take the 10% out of the, what did you say, $1 million we made?
Yeah, net profit. The profit of the company is $1 million.
So that $1 million goes in the, that $1 million is the profit. So you take 10% of that, that's 100,000.
No, I'm saying $1 million is the, let's say in the pool. Let's say $100 million is the profit and 1 million is in the pool.
So the $1 million, which is already the 10% of the, right?
Yeah.
So that means they made 10 million. So the 1 million is in the pool. Out of this 1 million, this employee, you're saying, who makes $5,000, his salary is irrelevant. Doesn't matter what his salary is.
Okay.
But his entitlement as a percentage. So if he is in the 1% category, he gets 1% from the $1 million.
1% of the $1 million.
Doesn't matter what his salary is. I'm just saying an example.
No, how is it possible if you are having more than let's say 5,000 employees? So 1% of $1 million, how every employee will get 1% of $1 million?
But it's not every employee. The 1% is a high category, by the way, Mustafa. The 1% is not going to be the $5,000 employee. That will be somebody like a senior manager.
No, as you said, there are 4 or 5 categories: CEO, directors, and what is the category of normal employee?
Depends. You guys can break it to the way you want. Depends on the size of the company and depends on the lower levels for us. They go down to 0.1. There is 0.2%, 0.25, and so on.
So if you collect all of them, it will become 100%. 100. I'm right?
Yes.
The formula at the back is if you add all of them, it will become 100.
Correct, Mustafa. There will be a capping, like the 10%. It will not exceed 10%. All the calculation is below 10%. Like I said, like we do 1% of the turnover. In the sense, revenues we take 1% aside. That 1% is divided, like as Mr. Husham said, the top management will get 30%. The rest is 70%. End of the day, 30 and 70 makes 100 only. So it cannot go beyond the target what we have set aside.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we follow, Husham.
Okay. We can talk on the phone if you want. I'll give you more details on it.
Okay. Thank you.
But just to think about it, the analogy is the guy who makes 1% is quite a senior guy. Just what I'm trying to say to you. He's not a junior employee.
Okay. I think Professor Iris has some question. Yes, sir. Your mic is on mute, sir.
Sorry, I didn't have a question. I just I unmuted by mistake. But yeah, this is really interesting. Because often people would just say, well, that sounds good in theory, but it cannot work in practice. And I think the key enabler is something that you mentioned, Sam, which is the people. You need to have the right people. So probably have good recruitment process and good selection process in that aspect, because one can easily imagine that if you have the wrong people in the team making the decisions, then this would just not work.
Absolutely, sir. You're absolutely right. And what because they are the like we mentioned earlier, the business drivers are the ones that make this happen, and that's why the right people, the leadership and the middle management and the supervisory levels and so on, they need to be of the right framework. They need to work together right to make this system work. Otherwise, it's not possible. And what we found is like ownership of the employees, employee engagement was a proven fact here. And you of course have to manage this well, govern it well to make it happen, and you have to be transparent with it. So these were things we challenged ourselves with, and with the hard work and with following up and how it's going, it worked. We managed that. It actually worked.
Okay, sure. So sorry. Your appraisal system, is it 360-degree balance scorecard? What type of appraisal system do you use?
What we have is the balance scorecard. We don't have the 360 at the moment.
Okay.
So just out of curiosity, Sam, when you, because it's been 3 years, so you probably have discussed this, with other companies in the industry, or they have definitely heard about it. Do you see sort of your competitors seeing that, oh, this sounds great, like the way we are responding to it, or says, oh, that's too risky? So I'm just curious if they can see the value of it.
Very interesting. Some people said you guys are crazy, you don't know what you're doing, and you're just throwing money down the drain. And some people said, wow, that's amazing. I would love it if we can implement something similar in our company. But unfortunately, my leadership won't give me leeway to do so. But we had some mixed feedback, to be honest with you, on this. And the other factor is in the business aviation field, normally companies are not so creative in these kind of ideas, because the market of unscheduled operation is very tricky. And it's very tricky in the sense of, if the aeroplane is sitting on the ground and there is no requests coming, you rely on requests coming in to operate your missions and get paid. So if the aeroplanes are not flying and sitting on ground, everybody will be out of the job in no time. So the market condition is one, yes, but the people working for you have to push to make these aeroplanes fly. The maintenance engineer has to make sure he finishes his job as soon as possible to make the aeroplane available for the sales, to sell more flights on it. The sales guys have to look at every platform. Now there's so many online platforms, and make deals and look at that. The flight crew and the cabin crew have to perform at their top levels so that the customers come back and fly with us again. And they have to be flexible as well, make themselves available to do flights. Because as we all know, the flight crew limitations and duties and things like that are very strict science. And they can easily reject flights and stay home while you lose $1 million flight, for example, around the corner. So it's one way to pull everybody together and to just prove it to everyone. It's like, okay, you want to make more money. You all want to make more money. We want to make more money too. Let's use this system and all of us push in the same direction.
It's great.
Competition, you're right. It's mixed emotions. Till now, we have some people who are still against it, by the way, externally. Until now, but that's how it is.
Really, it's amazing, to be honest, and I would love to know more and more and in depth how we can implement. Because when you are talking, I'm just trying to reflect it in my organization, how I can implement it here, and I really like the idea, and I really want even my people to get benefited from this and make a lot of money. Because if they are making money, means we are making money as well.
Yeah, I mean, it starts always at the leadership. If you
Yeah.
don't, if the leadership have to buy it in, support it, accept. It's like what we learned in the experimentation. When you try something, you have to accept the result regardless. You cannot say after you prove that you made so many millions in profit, oh, it's too difficult for me to give 10% away. No, you have to stick to it, to your word, and to say, okay, 10%, here it is back to the employees.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you do that, it will work.
Okay. Any other participant has any question, please go ahead.
Okay, mine is just a contribution. So I have worked in a company where we practice the same model. And that was why I was asking questions around objectivity, transparency, and what have you. When I was working with Standard Bank of South Africa, it's called Stanbic IBTC in Nigeria. We used to do bonus sharing where they mark a percentage of the annual profit and they shared it among all staff. But what I noticed, or what I've noticed over time, is that the people at the lower cadre in the organization, they are always not satisfied with the sharing formula. So it always affects morale. The profit share usually happen every March. So what you see people doing is people always wait till March to collect their bonus and resign and go to another organization. So it's a constant cycle every year. That was why I was asking those questions, to know how your team are taking this and if it's not creating any form of dissatisfaction among the workforce. Yeah, so that's the same bonus sharing practice that Standard Bank is practicing. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, get back to the 2 points. The transparency is very important. So the leadership, when you do something like this, you have to commit to the transparency. But the other thing is a strong governance. You have to make sure that this is fair and it is properly governed, That's where you rely on a strong HR to do that. And it sounds like, for example, if there is some people who are feeling unfairly treated, that means maybe that's a sign of poor governance, or maybe the HR team needed to be a little bit more focused on implementing this right way, or maybe the percentages which were shared across the people were not divided in a fair way, which can happen also.
Okay, so Husham, it's your presentation this is the last slide, or we have something more?
That's the last one, yeah. The rest is just thank you very much. And if anybody feels like trying luxury flying, please get in touch with us anytime.
No, definitely we will be in touch, and we would like to know what is the rate for one flight.
Don't worry. Now, COVID period, you can get a lot of good deals at the moment.
Can you please just stop sharing your desktop, and we'll move to Abeer. Abeer will start the next topic.
Sure. Thank you.
Unmute yourself, Abeer, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Husham, I really enjoyed your, highlights, and
Thank you. Thank you very much.
we are going to move to the concept of experimentation. Actually, I am going to be within the confines of our learnings. And thanks, Prof. Aris, for being around. Please correct me whenever I go and deviate from the right track. It's not my primary domain. But I really like the concept of experimentation. It's kind of, I think it's a helpful tool. And if we start by something that I'm quoting, I'm gonna go back to our module, but I'm quoting from an editorial from Harvard Business Review. It's called A Step-by-Step Guide to Smart Business Experimentation. And it goes back to 2011. It's just for us to kind of, compare where it was 9 years back. And by then they were talking about how managers or what managers have realized then. They realized the power of analytics, and they realized how sophisticated computers and software have given companies access to immense troves of data. This avalanche of data presents companies with big opportunities to increase profits. Just if they do it in the right way, they can't find a way to use it effectively. Another quote is that realities are different, actually. And by then, they focused or asserted that reality is that most firms cannot do that correctly. And analytics focus on dissecting past data. And that was a complicated task. Few firms have the technical skills to implement a full-scale analytic programs. Even companies that make big investment in analytics often find the results difficult to interpret, subject to limitation, or difficult to use immediately to immediately improve the bottom lines. How to deal with that? Most companies will go get more value from simple business experiments, and it's easier to draw the right conclusions using data generated through experiments than by studying historical transactions. And from that editorial, the focus was upon it's all about testing customers' responses. Back to our module, I'm quoting and refreshing our memories. I'm not getting anything out of that domain. That business, it is a business tool that is increasingly acknowledged to be so important to modern business, and particularly the managers, if done correctly. And actually, this is the challenge, if done correctly. And I keep putting those between brackets. So if there always has to be a question, and this question focuses on data. And I think, Husham, maybe this experiment you have done, I don't know to which extent it has kind of resemblance to our model, but when it comes to model or data collection, the question needs to be right question, and the data need to be relevant. Now, the process goes through phases of designing the experiment, driving an impact, and observing the outcomes. Driving an impact is by allocating or acknowledging or selecting the right metrics. And the word right means something significant. By that, we result into conclusions. Actually, that slide is kind of comprehensive, although it's kind of high level. The gold standard, as we already have learned, is randomized control trials by A/B testing to eliminate variables, to test an intervention by separating the variable of intervention from other variables. It's easy said, but how to do it? In complex systems, there are myriads of variables that cannot be dealt with unless we isolate the effect of the variable of interest, which is the intervention. AKA, this is the A/B testing at high level. In A/B testing, we should identify the influential factors that would affect the metrics of interest. Influential factors need to be acknowledged, the effects should be studied, and they can be eliminated by having a control group with randomization in a big sample. So the sample is divided into control group and intervention group. Sample, the bigger is the better, and this process needs to be a random tool. How about if data is broken or messy? I think this was a question I asked myself while I was going through our module, because we started with A/B testing, while sometimes the data itself is not the right data. So I think I don't know if it is a primitive concept, but I think the AA testing is the data validation, where instead of having two samples, the sample is divided into two groups, where the intervention is going to be in one group and the control is in another, there will be like identical matrices or variables in different set of users. So this is to validate the data prior to deploy the A/B testing.
So can we ask this question to Professor, if we are
Good.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, Mustafa. Is the question, how do you validate the data?
Abeer?
Actually, you are asking the question, Mustafa, but I think the idea is this the right choice to validate the data prior to do the A/B testing?
I mean, I 100% agree, Abeer, with your previous slides. The previous slide, if you go one back, I think you said something about how important it is to have basically clean data. And I recently started working with one of our
Previous one, Abeer.
basically what you have in the box there. How about if data is broken? That point. And I recently started working with one of our executive MBA students. And the one thing we find is that there is no guidelines about how companies can do that, to make sure that basically he calls them trusted data, meaning that basically data that you would trust and you can make decisions based on this data. And that's the more you dig up, you realize how difficult it is, and that this is often the biggest obstacle why people don't use analytics, or they don't trust the data, and in the end they make a gut fit based decision. About the AA testing, I agree with you, but I mean, this is one way to validate this. The only problem with the AA is that basically when you do the AA test, as you said, you want to see zero difference in the treatments, because there shouldn't be one if you're using the same method. But if that covers one sort of type of messiness in the data, but if your data are equally bad, so for example, you care about profit, but you collect data about revenues, to say a stupid example, again, you will see no impact in the revenues. So you will pass the AA test, but you still won't have relevant data. But again, I'm not aware of any quantitative methods that can tell you whether your data are relevant. And that's, hopefully I will have an answer in 6 months when I'm working with this person. But I might even reach out to you at some point, because the way we thought about collecting and doing some research about that is obviously by interviewing and talking to senior executives. So if we can be more than happy to talk. I don't know how, because he's one of them as well. I mean, he's basically the CTO for an investment bank. And yeah, I don't want to go too much into this, but this is an extremely important topic. So yeah, looking forward to seeing more about it.
Okay, we'll be in an awaiting mode then until then. Yeah, okay. So if you allow me to pursue, though nowadays I think things are a bit easier, because there is facilitations by the availability of big data. There is a rise of online firms where easier data are extracted at a lower cost. And it's kind of assumption that contemporary managers demonstrate increased statistical sophistications. I don't know how precise or is this, at least comprehending the statistical jargons. Instances, as we have taken from the module across the industries, big tech companies intensively experiment tens of thousands of controlled experiments annually. and large sample sizes where millions of users are being engaged in those samples. And we keep mentioning all those companies, and the list goes on. The value of experimentation should go around revenue and profitability, as well as the customer's experience. Do you think we have other values other than those two? Anyone?
I think these are the high level ones, but what about employee satisfaction or something like that? I don't know. Is that
Well,
another employee? I don't know. Sorry, but is that another angle of it? Is employee retention, employee satisfaction, engagement, whatever?
I think it's a very important point, but I don't know if experimentation per se is kind of focused on the employee, unless their inputs is kind of rewarding to them. I mean, whatever they are doing is rewarding, and this is a peculiar platform or situation where success is not the right value only, because even failures is considered in this particular domain, unlike other domains, as a good outcome as well, and the right mindsets. So I think this is very interesting point. And I think when it goes to customers experience, it's kind of, as you mentioned, high level, so it incorporates the reputation or whatever the firm is focusing upon as its strategic goals.
But
Thank
you
you.
can,
Abeer, it's Ashish. I have another question on this.
go ahead, Ashish, please.
Thank you. So at the moment, I think health and safety could be another value of experimentation. And that's why I thought it's worth asking you. So what we see is with COVID, we've got lots of experimentation on firms deciding to have people work in shifts, work on a certain day of the week and work from home on the next day. So I'm not sure if there's a science behind this, because different firms are making their own practices. It's obviously an experiment. And the idea behind it is that business continuity doesn't suffer, but also that health and safety is taken into consideration.
Actually, if you are asking me being the presenter or from healthcare sector, I don't know which one I should incline to. Nonetheless, I will go back to my business, primary business of healthcare. I'm not going to be as usual politically correct, but what I found out that the entire globe is not demonstrating the scientific health parameters like it used to do. So there is a lot of competition when it comes to something related to the COVID and health decisions, even the safety measures. But it's more or less, one of different factors playing a role, like, even, the financial concepts, the political concepts, they are all being in the same pool. So I think it's not purely healthcare perspectives when the decisions comes into play. I think every firm is having its own prioritization and depends on their own targets or objectives. And sometimes even the information or the decision making is not based purely on the knowledge, because still the knowledge is ongoing. So it's more or less of personal efforts or personal decision making. They try their best depending on their priorities as well. I think this is a question, a good question for everyone. If anyone has different insights, please let's hear more.
Another point, minor point rather, I think the focus of the business is to be in a stable position and to generate wealth for stakeholders. During the experimentation phase, the business is rather in a sort of like a disruption phase, and so constant experimentation is going to be detrimental for the business. So that could be a value that let's not cause too much of disruption by doing constant experimentation.
Nice. Thank you very much.
The key is to link it with an experimentation, but linked with the data, using the data. Because one of the things during this module made me think, like, when we talk about experimentation, am I gonna get me or others are gonna get confused that if I'm trying anything new in my day-to-day job, is that considered experimentation? Does it necessarily need data to work with it or no? These are some of the questions. But the thing what I learned from this one and what I've seen is impactful is when the company is going to experiment on something, and they made sure that experiment is based on data and there is outcomes that you can measure, but at the same time, you're not affecting the current operation of your organization, so that it doesn't become a burden for the people doing the day-to-day work. And that's where analysts and analytics and people like that will come handy. In our experience, where we did that previous example, for example, we did it ourselves, but it would have been much better and maybe much smoother, and maybe we made a lot of mistakes that could have been eliminated if we had proper analysts doing these things. Because thinking about it now, there is so much that could be measured, there is so much that could be analyzed, and there is so much that could be demonstrated to the benefits of it. And maybe some of it was seen by, like you mentioned there, Abeer, the revenue and the profitability, the customer experience, and that's why the point about the employee. But these are things where obvious results and almost like targets you want to reach. But yeah, if you had analysts, I'm sure it would have been even like dedicated analysts to just care and do that separately would be better. And one of the things which we are supposed to work on in our company right now, and again, it's a lot. We have a lot of data from flights since 2013, for example, and this has data like destinations, number of passengers, amount of fuel carried, number of stops you make to reach to a destination, source of requests, types of aircraft configurations. So we tried once to do that, and it ended up, like you mentioned, Professor, a minute ago, ended up becoming a huge bank of data, which we built it up. We went like, whoa, then we gotta stop here. We have to get an expert to sit down and derive for us to show us what these numbers are, what this data is telling us, so that should we look at certain destinations only, then make decisions in that sense, or should we, the next airplane we buy, should it be of a certain configuration only? For example, like in business aviation, the number 19 is a very big number. So an airplane is above 19 passengers or below 19 passengers makes a big difference in the certification and the cost that you pay to it, and how much you pay to qualify it for commercial operation and so on. So do we go for airplanes that are more than 19 passengers, which will do only a few trips in a year to when we have hunting missions or things like that, big parties or shopping missions? Or do we stick to the 19 passenger level, pay much less to buy that aircraft and configure it, yet it will be frequent flights coming in? So these are all questions.
Have you started machine learning yet with those data?
It's in this sense, honestly speaking, it's like something that you pay money to somebody and say, come on and invest me a system or invent me a system for machine learning that can get me this data out, because that will be ideal. Currently, we're just doing things manually.
I think we have a couple of guys working in the field. One, I think, is Gautam, and one is Saurabh. So they are into analytic tools. Their companies are doing the similar things. So you might get some help from Saurabh or Gautam as well.
Send me an email, please.
Yeah.
Let us look into that, because
I will request them to approach you so that you can
Sure.
have them.
Sure, yeah.
And both of them, I think they are today in our discussion. Saurav is there and also Gautam is there. So
Yeah,
I
please.
think,
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just that there should be no big project should be funded without evidence, backed up by some kind of experiment. I think this is a recommendation. And other tools that are kind of complementary, which is gaining a lot of reputation nowadays or popularity, the prototype making as well as design thinking. Design thinking is very popular all around in my country. Going back to this popular slide, we will focus on this phase, which is a very fundamental and crucial phase, designing the experiment. Designing the experiment needs to be correct, and this is a very heavy word. Without a correct experiment design, data analysis may not be able to connect the causality correctly and could confuse the correlation with causation. There could be misleading recommendations, or it could be inconclusive. So the recommendation is don't rely on intuition, conduct the right experiment. And why is that? Companies falsely think they understand the customers, their customers, but actually they don't. The customers make their choices sometimes consciously or sometimes subconsciously without even knowing why they took those choices. The results of the right statistical test could be humbling through unexpected outcomes. Now, there are certain, at least 6 considerations in experiment design, which are scope, big hammer, success, feasibility, buy-in, and culture of learning. I'm going to go through the highlights of those. The scope is the job of executives. They need to be very specific, very narrow, and they need to have the recognized variables upfront, whether they are dependent or independent. Hypothesis-driven approach and a purpose to accept or reject the hypothesis. The other consideration is the big hammer, where the intervention should balance between being of a big impact and reduced cost. Success is dependent upon upfront selection of right performance matrices, whether they measure the success or failure, as well as prioritizing important matrices, which are impactful, which add value, and are meaningful to business. So cherry picking data or success matrices are of no use. Actually, I'm focusing on certain quotes because it is very practical, very pragmatic. We see those in our experience. So it's very good to highlight those concepts. And those concepts are more or less related to managers' behavioral biases. Another consideration is the feasibility. Feasibility when it comes to cost, resources, and efforts, when it comes to scientific methods or sample size. And we always need to remember getting numbers is easy, but getting numbers which we trust is extremely difficult, and I cannot agree more from my experience. The next consideration is a very important one, which is buying in. We need to evaluate the executive acceptance or enthusiasm upfront and their awareness of the purpose and the impact. The recommendation is, to some extent, if there is a potentially no action, if the results are negative, we better not start the experiment. And this is something like we need always to weigh different perspectives against each other. Last but not least, the culture of learning. In this particular domain of experimentation, it's a very important paradigm. Experimentation in the learning curve is a start of learning process, and failing experiments are opportunities to learn. Actually, they are supposed to be, appreciated rather than learned from. For overcoming barriers, it's all about mindset. So avoiding to fail in a setting of a right experiment is prohibitive. performance or result-driven culture is kind of a barrier to some extent. We need always to accept failures in order to allow for innovations, and focusing upon process, not only the outcomes, with understanding the logic is going to help big time. Back to that editorial of step-by-step guide to smart business experiments, which again, 2011, they suggested 7 recommendations, which are focusing on individuals and thinking in short term, keeping it simple, starting with a proof of concept test. When the results come in, we need to slice the data, trying out of the box thinking and measuring everything that matters, looking for natural experiment. I can share this editorial in the group. By that, I would thank everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Abeer. And if anyone has any question, please go ahead. Or now we will close. I think we spent enough time today, and I'm really thankful to Professor Aras who joined us, Husham, who gave us, very good insight of chartered flight business. Although we are not into that business, we really want to know it more and more. And we would be looking for this kind of presentations where we can enhance our learning from our colleagues, from their experiences. Thank you all for joining. Anyone wants to add any word, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, everybody.
I have a question for Abeer, actually. Sorry, Abeer. Nice presentation. I love it.
Thank you very much.
It triggered my mind as well. You mentioned something about the funding for the experimentation. Now, the question, which one comes first? Because you have sometimes executives or maybe higher levels where if the experimentation costs, they wouldn't approve the funding until they see certain deliverables. So I wonder how that can be tackled. Which one comes first? Is it a chicken egg situation? I don't know.
I think the expert is here with us, but to my understanding, we're dealing with the concept at a bit of a higher level. Maybe there are a lot of details and breaking down items in each side. My experience I don't know, you keep hearing about the Vision 2030 and
yes.
2020. And a lot of things have happened the last few years. There were a real, grand amount of budgeting put in different industries for the realization offices of the vision. And I think in the healthcare, I could say some of the concept. I think there were good initiative, successful, advancement, as well as some of the advancement were very costly, but maybe because we didn't have this type of concept of experimentation, I think it was decided immaturely. So I think it depends, as we have got in the module, it depends on the awareness as well as the enthusiasm of the senior leaders. To which extent they are buying in, to which extent they are aware of the pros and cons, as well as not considering the failures as failures. And this is why I thought of it as a very peculiar business domain.
And as Husham, you said that the initiative that you have in your company, it's from top to bottom. And it is the same thing with experimentation. This approach will come top to bottom. If it is at the top, at the higher level, people wants to do it and they are ready to accept it. They are ready to frame the problems and then frame the right question and then doing the experiments and ready to do it, it will be successful. But it cannot be from bottom up. It will be from top to bottom.
I agree.
Definitely, yes.
Nice question, Shan.
I'll just make a comment. Thanks, Mustafa. I think I am actually experiencing something like that. I'm actually going through an experiment which I've been trying to convince my manager. over the last, I would say, 2 months, and I put together a lot of background work. And what I'm trying to do is to make a change in the organization structure within, trying to bring two teams together under one leadership, and which is a big change because it's not aligned with a global sort of org structure. And this is sort of an experiment, and this is how I position it to my manager. So whatever learning I picked up from this module, I actually built my submission or business case based on the 6 elements. And after 2 months of my work, finally, what is in my hand that yes, we should go ahead with it. It has benefits. Now I'm working in terms of the communication plan, which I roll out to the team on the ground, because that's where it's the next step to get their buy-in, to tell them that okay, fine, this is why it is good for the organization and for all of us. So I've actually positioned, I use all this learning to build this whole experiment.
Good.
You know, just like point, so I'm conscious of the time as well for everyone. But like the point, maybe Abeer, you can relate to that a little bit. One thing we've in our field, we part of the missions that we do is medical evacuation. So there's a lot of people here that get medically evacuated for treatments in Germany and in the States and so on, for a number of cases and a number of things. And the government funds that, you know, through the Department of Health or different entities, or the Crown Prince Office or whatever. And that's a generous approach to take. But at the same time, you see massive hospitals being built here, huge entities with massive capabilities, and you think to yourself, I've always wondered to myself, wow, you know, that's like, why are we flying people out of the country while all of these big massive projects are being done, and big huge government investment into the medical field in things like that. But again, just to think about it, is the experimentation done before the funding? And if it was done, maybe certain aspects or certain traits from the medical field or certain skills, if it was brought here, would that reduce the amount of cost being spent on flying people out there and stay for months and months while being treated? Things like that is...
Okay.
Again,
I think experimentation
maybe in
part
Saudi
is,
have a similar one, I don't know.
it's part of the culture as we think, and normally this type of cultures are in multinational companies. We don't see the experimentation culture in the governments, either is it Saudi or any other government. It's decision at the government level, and they will do it, and they will be thinking next 30 years, 50 years what's going to happen. I don't think so this thing even related to the experimentation is more about when you are building something that can be used at home. So looking at the feasibility that people will buy or no. So you have millions of users and they are taking part of the experimentation. So you can do it at that level. But Hisham, you are talking about that is purely at the government level, their decision, their vision of next 10 year, 20 year or 50 years. So that is where they are taking those decisions, that where they want their country in next, let's say 10 years or 20 years. So it is bit not related to experimentation, but as I said, experimentation is more related to users and all, mainly companies like Amazon and Microsoft and
I mean,
Apple. They are.
I meant more in the sense of like something I've seen, you know, that we are still flying people out
Okay.
while there is the big fest. But Abeer knows better than us. Maybe you can.
Actually, you are targeting very critically certain, aspects of the health system. It's not that.
Sure, yeah.
You are absolutely right. So a lot of budgets go. Healthcare is a very, very, very complex system, and in Saudi Arabia, it drains the budget, of the GDP.
Yes, I'm sure.
Yes. Actually, you are a very observant person. I agree with Mustafa. It's not a data-driven decision-making, and the decision-making depends on different factors. That's, I would say, historic. And it depends on the person who takes the decision. So we have noticed, at least in my, experience, humble experience, that I've stayed for a while in US in different areas, like in Beth Israel, Harvard, or Johns Hopkins, Baltimore, or UCLA. And in all those institutions, in the United States, in every state, there are Ivy League hospitals, like you cannot count them. And in every hospital, you see people from the Gulf coming as patients. Now, to tell you the truth, there are two perspectives. Amongst the Gulf, there are variations between Saudi patients, and on the other hand, the Emiratis and Qataris, particularly, and to some extent, the Kuwaitis. Now, what is the difference? Despite the projects, the healthcare projects, and we have met earlier, maybe 1 decade back, with the CEO of in Dubai, the healthcare city.
Yes.
And we could see a lot of details, but I don't think we can elaborate everything. But the health systems is in the Gulf areas is not as mature as in Saudi Arabia. And the CEO then, she was like transparently confessing that our target is to have a health system like Saudi Arabia, even in the regulatory perspectives, not only the resources. Now, the system is different between Saudi Arabia and the remaining of the Gulf, that ever since we started our medical schools, we are kind of conjoining with the North American, which are USA and Canada, unlike the remaining of the Gulf, which are linked to British systems. And created some kind of differences in terms of, the resources. The other thing, Saudis, the nationals are a lot compared to other, Gulf countries. And we have a lot of national resources that have got this kind of Ivy League or top-notch training and came back, they corrected the system. I'm talking about 4 decades back. So when I am there, I could see that there are more of Gulf citizens rather than Saudi system, because we could deal with our patients here. Despite the evolution of the healthcare centers and institutions, I don't think they reach to a national platform that is consistent enough for people to trust the system. So the other thing that is the availability of the cash. I mean, I think the remaining of Gulf countries, they have the cash more available to some extent than from Saudi government. Maybe it's related even to the governmental, policies and these type of things. So I think there are details here and there, but definitely, like Mustafa have said, it's not related to data-driven decision-making.
Not data matter, yeah.
Experimenting, yeah. I hope I answer your question.
Yeah.
I hope I was politically correct.
Very much so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. I just want to, at the last, I wanted to share that in Wednesday, we are going to have another session where we have very new topic. Vilayat Ali is going to tell us how HVAC system will help to avoid or protect us from COVID-19. So it will be very much interesting. So I would request everyone to join, and thank you for today's participation. And I think all of us are aware, tomorrow we have a session from Cambridge. So we'll be meeting again tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoyed the session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.